Good afternoon. This is Pastor John Rounds. I hope and pray you're having a good afternoon, a good morning, a good evening, and that you are really, hopefully, whether it be your car or be your iPhone or wherever it may be at, listening to this station today. I hope and pray that you're enjoying the messages and stuff. And so I pray that you have a great day. But anyway, I want to get into, because I just got into the very part of Daniel's dedication and his devotion. His devotion really ups his dedication, meaning that he has, irregardless of where he's at and what he's doing, no matter if he's in Judah or in Babylon, he kept that going. That's why I always tell people is when you go like you're going into Babylon and stuff, and be devoted as Daniel was devoted. I so want that. I look at that, and sometimes you weep a little bit because you're thinking that, man, I just so want what Daniel had, because I believe with all my heart, we talked about it last week, where Daniel was very skillful and very knowledgeable in wisdom and science, and was apt to teach in all of these things and all of it. And so this is where I got into this part. But let me go ahead and read this, and I'll get right into that. Daniel chapter 1, verse 3, and it says this, "And the king spake unto Phinehas, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princesses, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge, understanding science, and such as had abilities in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he forgave unto Daniel the name of Belshazzar, to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. But Daniel appointed in his heart that he would not defile himself and the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself." And so with that, I want to go ahead and just kind of say a little prayer here. It said, Father, I pray that you just move and minister and bless this time. Bless the words that come from this mouth, Lord God, that, Father, that you would have its will, have its way, that we may give you the praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I should be doing that all the time. It's where I begin to bless God, because truly He is the God that is able to open hearts and minds up, and being able to give them the wisdom and understanding in them. So Daniel had the opportunity to know and to understand. It's interesting because wisdom, knowledge, understanding all actually goes into, it's actually contained, it says here, it's contained into knowledge, it's contained into science. You put all that together and you get the wisdom that God is trying to give to you. Now, this wisdom is interesting because when you look at the word wisdom, you find that it goes into one's life. In other words, how you lived. The wisdom you get could be from your parents. The wisdom can get from how you grew up, how you went to school, how, the very things that you've done during that time, and how you grew up into that, and the wisdom and knowledge you've learned from other people. This is why it's very it's very hard and very heartfelt when you find that people wind up killing other people. They don't really find out what's in their wisdom that they can get out of that. They always say if you kill somebody, if you have a homicide with somebody, you find out that not only you're killing them, but you're killing their children. And you kill their children, you're killing their grandchildren. And when you kill their grandchildren, you're killing their great-grandchildren. I watch, every once in a while, my wife and I will watch a devotion, not a devotion, but it's a show, what it calls, when you want to go into your DNA, when you want to go into your families and your friends, or not so much your friends, but your families, what you're related to, and all of this. And they have a couple of. It's interesting to listen to that. You have a couple of programs, and it shows them their father, their mother, which they already knew that, their grandparents, in which I believe they already knew that. But they start showing their great grandparents and their great great grandparents, and they go up to maybe even the fourth great grandparents. And it's interesting how they chase all of that down, because they have terminologies. They have all of these things in which you can do that. But these people, it's interesting, and they ask them, well, what do you think about that? What do you think about your parents? How do you think your parents brought you up to be? Who do you think you are right now? And this is fascinating. It's interesting why that guy, he's asking, what's the part of wisdom that they have given to you, and for you to go through all of this. And they actually will go up, well, their grandparents have went through, some went through World War I, some went through World War II. What do you think about that? How was the wisdom over that? Did you know that? Did you understand that? And so some of the questions, they're talking about wisdom. They're talking about how they showed them, and they actually will kind of explain, well, there's certain things I didn't know about them that all of a sudden I'm doing. I'm doing those very same things, but I'm doing them in a different stage, a different time, and stuff. And so this shows them that they are going through wisdom in all of this and stuff. And so it's interesting that the wisdom and intelligence actually talks about the physical being, how much you're growing into. The Babylon is actually talking about the hardship, how they felt during that time. The wisdom that brought out from that is it had to be a hardship. It had to be hard for their parents to see their children being brought out. Some people say that their parents would perhaps kill. This was for the first one. Matter of fact, it was for the first one that Nebuchadnezzar's father passed away. That Nebuchadnezzar had to leave that place, go back to Babylon, and come back. So when he went back to Babylon, he actually took some of these people. Some people say their parents were dead during that time. I really don't think so. But anyway, whether they were or whether they weren't, it had to be a hardship. It had to be something that they were among the king's palaces, so it had to be, it had to be a hardship for them to all of a sudden they see their kids and they realize they're not going to see them again. They'll never ever see them again and stuff. And so it had to be a hardship for them to see that and to learn that and stuff. And so this is a wisdom that would come to that, a wisdom of hardship, of going from one country of Judah to another country of Babylon. Babylon, I've read some parts of it. It's touched like, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 220 square miles during that time. So it was massive to where Babylon was at during that time. When them guys walked in there, they could not believe the massiveness that place was at. However, I do not believe they would have ran up against and capture Judah if it wasn't for the Lord. It was the Lord who said, I have given Babylon into Judah's hands. And so it was God who did that. And if it wasn't for God, and it wouldn't happen and stuff. And so a lot of people, and I will get into that as we go down into this. And so is as much as the ability of wisdom and knowledge and also of science they were to name. And doubtless these men, all of this, all captured into the parts of science that actually began in Egypt and Babylon with also with the birth of mathematics and mythology, astronomy, and all of these things would be going down into these part, and also the astrology as far as the cycle of man, the things that are going around in the world and stuff. And so all of these with 360 degrees of the planets. I'm sorry, the planets. It's such an easy word, and somehow I forgot them. But the planets going around in 360 degrees. So the zodiac, that was mentioned, the zodiac. Daniel was no doubt trained in all of these sciences, so it brings the wisdom, what he has known and learned and understood. And I believe this wisdom came from the Lord. And this is a very important part, and I'll get down into that shortly. To stand in the king's palace is where he was to stand. And he talked about the tongue of the Chaldeans. This is one part of that. And this is actually what is called the tongue of the Aramaic language. It was also to understand the style of writing employed that was in the ancient Babylon. Also, the Babylon was then the premier city in the world. So the education, at least into that, to know it and to understand it and being able to write it out into that. Matter of fact, they said Daniel chapter 1 through chapter 6 was in the Aramaic, and that's why they're saying that, they're saying that Daniel wrote it out in the 1st century or in the 2nd century, but he did not. He wrote it out into the 6th century of that and stuff. And so of the scientists and of history that records all of these things, what Daniel has done. But it was a battle of the minds. This was a battle of the minds. This was to try to get Daniel to go away from the Jewish part, his devotion part of that, his dedicated part of that, and go right into the heathenistic part of that. And Daniel wanted no part of going through all of that at that particular time. So Daniel was to being able to do all of these things and to choose the right person. Matter of fact, it's like a university scholar, a 4.0. Oh, he's supposed to be a grade A student all the way through, and Daniel was such a person. Let's get into verse 5 real quickly. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, and at the end thereof, that he might stand before the king. The daily provision, the king's meat and the king's drink that he was to do. This was Nebuchadnezzar. This was the king's desire for him to do. The wine and the meat were one that was dedicated, devoted to idols. This was devoted to idols. This was the type of meat and drink that was devoted to idols, where Daniel said, I cannot drink of that. It's interesting that he said he didn't go right out into Alphanizes. I believe that's the master of the people that brought him along there. But he went right out and he told them that he went out and actually he had told them what he would do during that time. So in that he worshiped by, but he said that this was Nebuchadnezzar's idol. The meat and the drink was offered into idols, and Daniel said, "I cannot do that. I can't do that." And basically, I believe with all my heart, it was God. That's why he said there was grace given to Daniel. And it meant that it was God that was implementing on Daniel not to do this thing, that he had something bigger and better for him to do. Oh man, I can't even imagine what Daniel would see and foresee and how he would look at God. I believe with all my heart he worshiped and served God in Judah all throughout the years of 14 to 16 years during that time. And he's seen God as he was, as he is, as the God of Abraham, as the God of Isaac, as the God of Jacob. He's seen God in all of this, and yet he was about to see God that would do things, that would show things and do things in Daniel's life that would, I believe, totally blew his mind at that time. Daniel did not know or did not even understand in chapter 2 what God was about to do, and Daniel was about to foresee the revelation that God would give to him at that time. That at the end thereof they might stand before the king refers to this was the king's action for him to do, and for them to change it would not only put Daniel in jeopardy of losing his life, but also put the master of the house to lose his life. He said, my head he will require. And he wasn't joking about that. He knew that because this was the king's doing, and for him to relinquish that would require his head into that. Now listen to this. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Verse 7. Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. These Hebrew names were actually ones that would change, that like Nebuchadnezzar wanted. He wanted them to look like Jews on the inside, but the heathenistic and the Babylonians on the outside. And Daniel said, we cannot do that. And basically what he was saying in his own heart, he said, we will not do that. Even if the king, even if these men refused to change the diets, Daniel would probably have to go right down and say, we can't do it. And most likely they wind up being killed by Nebuchadnezzar because they refused to do what the king wanted. But it was God. Listen to this. It was God who was going to do this. It was God who was going to show the most heathenistic. It's like Daniel said, this guy was the one who gave the commandments to make people live, or gave the commandments to make people die. Matter of fact, it was Jehoiakim that he actually has taken their kids, and Jehoiashim, he stood them out to look at them, and he killed them one by one, and then he put a heated sword to Jehoiakim's face where he was blinded, and that's what Jehoiakim would see all the days of his life, of his children being killed over and over and over again, and it was something he would not be able to change unless he truly gave his life to Christ, which was not told there. So Belshazzar was the prince of Bel, was Hananiah. He was made to forget Jehovah. Shadrach, which means the command of AQ, AKU. Also what's called a moon god. Mishael, who is God, which changed to Meshach, which is as God AQ. And so all of these men's names were changed to Shadrach, was also changed to that, knowing that these men would be Jews on the outside, but a heathenistic or heathen people on the inside. So all of these were done that way. Daniel was God's representative on earth, serving as an aid or a mouthpiece to Nebuchadnezzar and to all of them that were round about him. I believe that as far as the meat and the drink, there's probably some of the people in Daniel's, either from Judah or Jerusalem or from Israel, that did take of that meat and take of that drink. They probably thought in their heart, well, we can serve God too. It's like they always did in Judah and like they always did in Israel. They served God in the temple that Solomon built, but they also served other gods. And God said, I will have no other God except by me. and stuff. And this is why Daniel said, I can't serve that God. Even if it kills me, I will not be able to serve it. But Daniel did such a way, when you read through the scriptures, he did it in such a way where it says that among them were of the children of Judah, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names for them. I want to back up here real quickly because I want to mention something. Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom, cunning and knowledge, wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, being able to put these two things together, and such as had the ability to know them and to stand in the king's palace, in whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And it said, and the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank. And so these are some of the things that Daniel was told to do. Now among them was that Daniel also was a person who was also a representative of the mouth of God. He was the one that was able, I believe the 3 Hebrew people that were with him was able to take of that. But what I was saying here is the fact that some of these men most likely did take that meat and that drink, and they felt, well, I could serve God anyway. And God said, I'll have no one else except through me. And so Daniel knew that. He understood his dedication showed him that this was Jehovah, this was God, this was the God and stuff, and he was going to hold God up no matter what through the Babylonians. Matter of fact, they say, I was reading one commentary where it said that it was good. It was a good possibility that Nebuchadnezzar might have been saved. I believe it's out of chapter 4, verse 25, around there where it speaks about him being prideful and arrogant in that. I can't overemphasize. I try to tell the young as well as the old that don't get angry, don't get bitter at someone who does you wrong. Being able to pray for them, being able to hold them up, being able to do something for them, and if need be, buy them something. If the Lord directs you to, but don't be angry for that. There is no one but the anger is in the eyes of the Lord and stuff, and God will deal with that. So don't be the meaning thing. Don't get prideful of that, because pride is like a cancer. It'll start on you and it'll eat at you until finally it'll kill you. And find this so arrogance, actually pride and arrogance. Arrogance is like a cancer. It'll eat on you until it'll kill you. And so don't get angry with people, but being able to show that Christ likeness that's in you, even though they don't show at the time, show them that. And that'll be able to help witness that. Daniel was the one that showed the life of Christ, the image of Christ in their heart and life. And so this was very important in Daniel's life. And so in that, he was to be the judge. Daniel was also named to indicate the final authority in the verdict of God's, not man. That's why he said God is judge. The word that Daniel had, he said God is judge. And he said that I'm going to bring up God as being the true God in the place of Babylon throughout this time. And so with that, I know actually I'm running just a little bit out of time, and so I'll quit in that, and I pray that you've enjoyed the message today, and pray that you will have a great day, have a good time, and we'll speak to you come next week. With that, Pastor John Brown for Endurance. Have a great day. Bye now.